So the government is telling you that you gotta buy from their friends and do everything they say. Well, bump that. Let's get rid of what we're supposed to buy. Then they can't force us to buy it, right? Find out what happens when you try that. Thanks for watching Learning with Sprayberry, where we make social studies fun, easy, and educational. Today we're going over the Boston Tea Party. You probably know about dumping tea in the harbor, but let's get deeper than just tea throwing. Background! Think back to the 1760s. England had just helped colonists fight off France and Native Americans. They were broke, and they blamed us for it. So in order to make up for a lot of it, England started slapping acts and taxes on the colonists, ending the policy of salutary neglect. For more information, check out my other videos about the acts that led to revolution and the end of salutary neglect. In addition to all these taxes and acts, the Boston Massacre happens on March 5th of 1770. 5 colonists are killed after an angry protest outside a customs house. After the massacre, England pulled back on many of the taxes except for the Tea Act. To be honest, Americans were drinking 600 tons of tea a year, so England knew there's some money there. Colonists were angry at England and refusing to buy tea. Instead, they chose to import Dutch tea, which is illegal. This eventually pushed the East India Company towards bankruptcy. England chose to prop up the company by killing the tax on tea that came from East India Company. This meant that the tea was now incredibly cheap compared to the smuggled Dutch tea. Smugglers had to raise the price of smuggled tea to cover the risk of being caught. Even with all of this, colonists still chose to buy illegal tea. A couple of famous smugglers, Samuel Adams and John Hancock, still brought in tea. Fun fact, both these guys are members of the Sons of Liberty. This is a group that bonded over a mutual dislike of British policies. Well, Adams and Hancock get together with people protesting 3 ships arriving with British tea. Thousands of colonists met and refused to allow the Dartmouth, the Beaver, and Eleanor to be unloaded. The governor refused to send the ships back to England unless they were unloaded. This creates a rock and a hard place kind of situation. The night of December 16th led to Native Americans, which were actually members of the Sons of Liberty dressed as Native Americans, showing up and throwing 342 trunks of tea into the harbor. It took 3 hours to throw the $1 million worth of tea into the water. If you're like me, you got questions. Why in the heck are they dressed like Indians? Well, the answer is twofold. One, it does kind of obscure your identity, but white folks dress in the way they think Native Americans look, and real Native Americans, you're not going to get those two confused. It does, however, establish and create the point that these citizens view themselves as Americans instead of British. Impact! The news of the party spread around. Some future founding fathers, John Adams, was impressed, while others, like George Washington, felt the colonists had lost their minds. Weirdly, Ben Franklin thought the East India Company should be repaid for the tea. Other colonies threw their own versions of tea parties, which focused primarily on boycotting tea. Check out my video on the Edenton Tea Party to find out how NC partied. England's response was like Washington's on steroids. They passed what was known as the Coercive Acts. It had a few parts to it. First, it closed the Boston port until the tea could be paid back. Second, it shut down the Massachusetts government and ended elections in Massachusetts. Third, it created martial law in Massachusetts, which put England in charge of all business in the colony. 4, it required a quartering of troops in citizens' homes. The goal of all these acts was to push Massachusetts into submission, but it didn't really work. Instead, it served to galvanize the colonists into continuing the revolution. To show England just what they thought of these acts, there was a second Boston Tea Party in 1774. This time, 60 colonists threw out 30 chests of tea. Nobody really talks about this one because it was much smaller and less dramatic. Besides, nobody ever talks about the second person to do something. We only care about the first person. These acts pushed colonists to respond with the Continental Congress. Essentially, colonies sent representatives to discuss how to respond to England's continued aggression. The colonists decided to petition England for the Coercive Act's repeal, they boycotted goods, and they started to raise a militia in case war does happen. Alright, so you know where this is going. Revolution, war, peace treaty, constitution, and we all live happily ever after until 1861. But here's the question of the day. If the Boston Tea Party had never happened, Would the colonists have been pushed into full revolution? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more content from me, hit subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell because I try to drop videos every Monday. Thanks for watching Learning with Sprayberry, where we make social studies fun, easy, and educational. Thanks.